border. Danny Ayalon is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States. He's with us now. So the focus in the last hour or so is on the situation in the north. We've got the Iranian foreign minister in Beirut right now. He said that Hezbollah's entry into the war will be a huge earthquake for Israel. This is exactly what the United States has warned against, isn't it? It has warned Hezbollah not to get involved. Can we expect some kind of support from the Americans at this stage?
Oh, absolutely, Laura. And you're right. You know, if we look now at the original picture, and we remember that just a week or so ago, before the war started, there was a summit, if you will, in Beirut between the Iranians, between Hezbollah and Hamas together. So we know it's all orchestrated. The mastermind is Iran. This is obvious. Whether they just pulled the trigger on the 7th of October or not, it's beside the point. They are the ones who are masterminding. They are the ones that are supplying, training, and everything. Now, from the Iranians' position, of course, they would like to have Israel facing multiple fronts. If they had their way, it wasn't just Hamas in Gaza, in the south, and not just Hezbollah in the north, in Lebanon, but also the Palestinians, and they have Hamas in the West Bank, also inciting Israeli Arabs in Israel itself to turn against their neighbors in the Jews, and in the northern border with Syria, when they have the militia, the Iranian militias in Syria and in Iraq. This is their plan. Now, the thing is here that Israel has its capabilities, and also it has its allies, first and foremost the United States, which understand it. They missed, let's say the Hezbollah missed the opportunity. The window of opportunity was slim. God forbid, had they were starting an onslaught the same time where Hamas did, October 7th, we would have been in a much, much, much worse situation. It would have taken us much more than it did in order to regroup. But now they lost the opportunity. So for Hezbollah now, when we are ready for them, if they now attack...
Well, when you've got the world's largest aircraft carrier sent by the United States in the Eastern Mediterranean right now, more military aid is on the way. Can that be deployed?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there is another point which should be understood. After the Abraham Accord was achieved, Israel, from the American perspective, the coordination with the military was moved from EUCOM, the European command of the Americans, to CENTCOM, which is the central command based in the Gulf. So today there is almost a seamless operation, if needed, between the IDF and the American forces, which is a huge difference. So of course, the American group, the strike group in the Mediterranean, which is basically now very close to the shores of Lebanon. And again, God forbid, we do not need American boots on the ground. We are capable of defending ourselves. But what they do in terms of the capabilities that they have with the Sixth Fleet, with the carrier that they have, the Gerald Ford, it's electronic warfare, it's ballistic missiles defense. There is this Aegis, which is something, and it is also now, it could be integrated and coordinated with Israeli systems. So this is really adding a great defensive shield for Israel, which is a great deterrence. Now, if Hezbollah now were to start, and I don't think they will, because they understand that they lost their opportunity. Because if they started now...
So when we talk about these attempted infiltrations, is this Hezbollah or is this Hamas?
Well, it's both, because Hamas couldn't be able to do it. There is Hamas Lebanon, of course, the Palestinians in Lebanon, but they wouldn't be able to do it without the coordination and permit from Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is doing it just as a matter of showing solidarity, maybe of provoking, to show, to have the record in the history that they didn't sit idle. So it's more like, how should I say it? Some kind of symbol, like a fig leaf, so something that, a symbol, you're right. But I don't think it will go beyond that, because if they do, we are ready.
Let's talk about Hamas then. In a significant victory for the IDF, they've killed not only the head of the Hamas Aryan force, they've also killed the Hamas commando who actually led the brutal raid on southern Israel a week ago.
Yes, and now see, once Israel regroups, they will work very methodically, and it's very important to sound it, especially to international audience that you have, Laura, is that what Israel does today is not out of revenge; it's out of self-defense. And the fact that we go, and we will continue to go one by one after all the perpetrators and the leader of this ISIS-like Hamas, is not just as a matter of course they deserve it because of what they did, but mostly it's because of preventing and preempting their next attack. So this is a self-defense, and they all should be really put out.
Okay, Danny, we're going to go now to the southern border there, with the border with Gaza. Our Jonathan Regev is there. Jonathan, 2 senior commanders taken out with Israeli airstrikes.
Yes, true, and Israel said it loud and clear. Now all of the Hamas leadership, political wing, military wing, whatever wing, their targets, and they will be eventually found and killed. Whoever you can kill from the air is very nice, but eventually, if you want to catch all of them, you will have to enter militarily, and it will be enter through the ground, and it will be a difficult affair because the Hamas leaders are very brave when it comes to putting the citizens of Gaza in danger. They're telling them don't move, despite the fact that the IDF has told them to move, and they're putting the Gazan population in danger. They're very brave at doing that. They're far less brave by appearing themselves. They're stuck deep underground, and you can rest assured where they are, there is electricity, there is water, there is fuel, there is anything they need to be there for quite some time. But Israel is sending a message: we're after you, we'll get you, and it has begun.
And there was a limited ground operation into Gaza last night, wasn't there, Jonathan?
Yes, very limited, we have to say. A ground incursion a few tens of meters or hundreds of meters into Gaza, mainly to gather information that could help perhaps with the look for hostages, and also to make sure that there are no terror squads waiting inside the Gazan territory to infiltrate into Israel through the various holes that still exist in the fence. There was some kind of an incursion, yes. Is it the ground incursion? Far from it.
And what about signs that tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians, hundreds of thousands, I should say, the IDF says, are moving south in Gaza, heeding that warning from the IDF?
Yes, many are moving south, understanding that a very strong response from the IDF, whether from the air or from the ground, will eventually come. Hamas is trying to stop that first psychologically, telling its own citizens that all this information is psychological warfare from Israel, and also actually putting roadblocks to try and prevent Gazans from moving. As I said, they're very brave when it comes to their civilians' life, much less brave when it comes to their own lives.
All right, Jonathan, thank you. Jonathan Regev there at the border with Gaza. Well, another video of one of the terrorists, the Hamas terrorists, who was captured alive in southern Israel on Saturday, has been released by the Israeli security forces. You can see for yourself now.
وشيوخ وإسلام ورجال وأطفال وصغير وكبير ومرأة وصبي. شو عملوا فيهم؟ قتلوه. كيف قتلوه؟ قطعوا رؤوسهم. كان حماس. بعد ما قتلوا الناس قطعوا رؤوسهم جنبهم. ايش كانوا يعملوا بعد السؤال اللي خطفوهم؟ بقول لك يمكن زنا اغتصاب، اعتداء، وتحقيق. كل واحد له فكر، زنوا اعتدوا عليهم. الأطفال يمكن زنوا فيهم، خطفوهم، اعتدوا عليهم.
Admitting on camera what atrocities were committed a week ago. Well, one of the many Israelis who have been affected by those atrocities committed by Hamas terrorists last week joins us now. Ayalon, thank you for being with us. It's incredibly hard what you're going through. Can you tell us a bit about your situation? Tell us what happened.
Yes, thank you for having me. Last Saturday, it's unbelievable that it's a week ago already. We woke at 6:30 to sirens for the most part across the country. We have family all over Israel. And when we came back from the bomb shelter, we began checking in with the rest of our family. We started getting messages from our family in the south. They live on kibbutz near Oz, which is very, very close to the Gaza border. When the sirens go off, they stay in their shelter because of the proximity. And they began telling us that Hamas had infiltrated not only the border, but that they were in their kibbutz, that they could hear them in the house turning everything upside down. They could hear gunfire, and that they were afraid for their lives, that felt like a Holocaust for them. We lost contact with them around 11 or 12 in the morning. We believe maybe the army asked them to turn their phones off so that they wouldn't be points of identification. And we didn't hear anything from them. We haven't heard anything from the 5 of them. There are 5. Carmela is 80. She's there with 3 of her grandchildren. 12-year-old Noya, who has special needs. 16-year-old Sahar. 12-year-old Erez, 13-year-old Noya, who has special needs, and 16-year-old Sahar. They are there with their father, Ofer, who is 53. And on Sunday, we got Hamas uploaded a video with Erez, who is 12, in their hands, in the hands of terrorists.
My goodness, I'm so sorry. What are the authorities advising you? What advice are you getting?
We're working very closely both with the government of the United States, because Carmela is American, and with the French government, as all 5 of them are French. And we are very, very grateful both to the U.S. and to the French government for the help that they're giving us. Mm-hmm. We are doing everything we can to work with governmental authorities and with any third parties. Our main press right now is to get citizens, both of France, the United States, and all other countries, to pressure their governments, to pressure Hamas to get humanitarian aid in. It is against the Geneva Convention. It is a war crime to hold hostage elderly people and children, especially children with special needs. There are people there that are wounded and need their medicine. These are very, very dire needs. And without releasing the hostages, it only becomes worse for the citizens of Gaza, who also need humanitarian aid.
Oh, how do you feel, Abby, when you hear these humanitarian groups decrying the situation for the civilians of Gaza, but you're not hearing any calls for the hostages to be released?
I feel, as a Jew who was born in America and who lives in Israel, like we have said never again our whole lives, and it is happening. That we are experiencing a Holocaust and a pogrom and a terror wrapped in one. And I believe, as a terrorist organization, Hamas not only rains terror on the citizens of my country and my family, but they are holding their own citizens hostage, and it is terror for all of us.
Abby, you're incredibly strong. What is getting you through this? How do you keep going?
I have an amazing husband and family. And beyond that, the Jewish community globally and within Israel, unfortunately, knows how to come together in these moments. And the amount of funds raised and gear flown in and food brought and support for our soldiers who are defending us is the thing that is giving me hope. And I believe our only choice right now is hope. They have tried to erase us before, and we are here. We will continue to be here. We are a people who believe in peace, who believe that this is not the Israeli-Palestinian issue, that this is an issue of terror. I lived in the United States on 9/11, and we stood then against ISIS, and we stand now against Hamas.
All right, thank you very much, Abby Onan. Everyone in the country is praying for you and hoping for a good outcome to this nightmarish scenario that nobody should have to go through. Abby, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Danny, that's just, there are no words for how heartbreaking that is. A 12-year-old child, a grandmother, somebody with special needs, completely mercilessly taken by Hamas terrorists.
Well, it's beyond words. But yet, with all this darkness, when you see, the lady Mrs. On here, that gives you not only hope, but strength. And I think this is really the Jewish spirit, whereby, and again, we have been seared, unfortunately, by 2,000 years and more of trials and tribulations, culminated with the Holocaust just less than 80 years ago. So we know, we have been beaten, but we always came back. And this is the same situation now. We'll come back, and we are coming back.
And of course, it's not just Israelis. There are many foreign nationals being held
Yes.
Among the hostages, which does mean that other governments are involved in. I think this is one of the worst hostage situations in history,
Yes.
Affecting multiple countries.
Yes.
I mean, will there be attempts at some kind of negotiation?
Well, you're right. I think it's unprecedented in the scope. So many people. But it's not just the scope in the terms of the number of hostages, but also who they are. It's the first time we see babies, 85-year-old ladies. It's just incredible. And yes, everybody, governments are involved. Whether this will be helpful or not, with the Hamas, you never know. But it is very important to keep the pressure. And if now anyone, you mentioned it, that, how do we feel when people are calling us, on the humanitarian situation in Gaza? I mean, we don't want any harm for the people of Gaza, not at all. But when Hamas is in charge there, and before they talk about any humanitarian situation, the demand should be release the hostages before anything else.
And of course, Hamas is trying to win the communications, the media war, by not only making sure as many of its own civilians are killed as possible, but also kind of trying to play a psychological game with Israel, that they have the hostages there as well.
Yes, but I think they have overplayed their cards. We remember Gilad Shalit. By the way, for Gilad Shalit, Israel paid dearly with 1,400 mass, with murderers. By the way, the top guy that was released for Gilad Shalit, Yahya Sinwar, is the leader of Hamas now, who is also the one organizing what we have seen. So I think we will change the rules of the games now, whereby we'll do everything to release the hostages, but not at the cost of our lives.
Destroy Hamas, that's the number one goal.
I think so. I think so, yeah.
Well, the death toll in Gaza now stands at, according to Hamas, 2,215, and those figures are released, I stress, by the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry. It is a figure that does not distinguish between terrorist and civilian deaths. It's important to bear that in mind. It is in the interest, of course, of Hamas to have a high civilian death toll, because Hamas wants to sway the international community into pressuring Israel into stopping its campaign to destroy Hamas. Well, one example of Hamas propaganda they released but then quickly deleted this video. It clearly shows a plastic doll being pulled from the rubble and passed off as a dead child. So they posted that video and then they quickly deleted it when they realized what they had done and that nobody would be fooled by that. And outrageously enough, real pictures of murdered and massacred babies on the Israeli side have been released. There is pressure from the United Nations, not from the United States. We saw that very strong statement of support from Lloyd Austin, the US Defense Secretary, here in Israel yesterday, saying Hamas was in fact worse than ISIS. The UN, however, is a very different organization, and it is already trying to put the pressure on Israel to stop this air campaign.
Yeah, but at this point, Laura, they're irrelevant. As long as we have the United States on our side, the UN is irrelevant. And we know this is the most hypocritical and the most cynical body since its inception on the ruins of the old League of Nations of before World War II. They have done nothing to prevent hunger, to prevent wars and refugees all over the world. And we should not heed to anything they say, just focus on our friends and allies, first and foremost the United States, but also the Western countries, which also are on our side, namely United Kingdom and France, which are also members of the Security Council. And they are the ones together supporting the United States can prevent any unwanted step against Israel.
And just a reminder before we go of the top latest developments, the IDF says that 2 senior Hamas commanders have been killed in targeted strikes. That includes the commander who led the brutal onslaught on the southern communities of Israel a week ago today. The IDF also says that the latest drone infiltration alert in the north was a false alarm. Important to point out. The IDF has already destroyed another attempt at infiltration, 3 terrorists killed. As Danny points out, Hamas and Hezbollah are trying to show in a limited way solidarity with what's going on in Gaza. You've got the Iranian foreign minister, of course, in Beirut right now as well, saying that his proxies are ready to join the fight. The United States yesterday, the defense secretary here in a strong message said to those forces, one word: don't. We'll keep you updated here on i24 News with all the very latest. Do stay with us.